Hello again. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope you enjoyed the tacos and the exhibition downstairs. So I wanted to, oh, that doesn't loop anymore. But anyway, so there's a lot of people we have to acknowledge for tonight for sure, including all the people who are part of the exhibition. So again, today is World Fisheries Day, and around the world we celebrate the sustainable fisheries and also the viability of small-scale fisheries in particular. And opportunities to do this around the world really important for us to recognize. I mean, not all the time that we get to enjoy an event like this, but once a year we like to give that thank to small-scale fishing people and also other fisheries people who are really providing food and providing livelihoods and also taking care of the aquatic environments for us. So tonight we have a full program in terms of, well, the exhibition downstairs is part of that, and the fish taco contest as well. And then we would have our panel discussion for this evening. So it's an opportunity to have the discussion. What really we are talking about here is really about how to have sustainable fisheries and sustainable communities as part of that one and the same. There's a lot of fishing people embedded in the communities, and therefore the conversation really is about what will be some of the initiatives, especially some innovation and transformation in some cases that will be required in order to have this happening. So I would come back after we get a proper opening of the event with Professor Paul Snellgrove, who will be speaking on behalf of the Ocean Frontier Institute to introduce to us about what the initiative is about. Then I would speak a little bit about the Too Big to Ignore project, and then we'll get started with our panelists who I would introduce before we, once we finish with the opening. So without further ado, I invite Professor Snellgrove to tell us about the Ocean Frontier Institute.
Thank you, Ratana, and good evening, everybody. What a wonderful opportunity to celebrate fisheries here in Newfoundland. Quite an important part of our history, and great to have an opportunity to celebrate. And there are good news stories, and we've heard some of them today through some of the displays that we've seen. And I want to tell you about a new initiative that Memorial University is a key player within, called the Ocean Frontier Institute. And so the idea here is to try and reimagine the way that we think about North American research. And I'm going to give you a very brief summary of this. We have a very good web page. Julie is here and will be here all evening. I have to leave, unfortunately. Hockey calls. So it's sort of a sacred thing that Tuesdays I cannot give up hockey, which is unfortunate because I really want to meet some of our panelists. So I hope there'll be another opportunity. In any case, this Ocean Frontier Institute is an initiative that brings together three of Atlantic Canada's universities, Memorial University, Dalhousie University, and the University of Prince Edward Island. And these are universities that in the past have sort of done their own thing, but we've come together under this single umbrella to compete for and successfully win a major national award, research award from the Canadian Center for, someone help me out here. What are we? Canada First Research Excellence Fund, thank you. I should have put it on the slide. In any case, Canada First has awarded us close to $94 million. In combination with that, we have contributions from a variety of other partners, including both industry and government and NGOs. And the total amount here, including some of it which is in kind, is close to $220 million. And so it's a huge initiative for Atlantic Canada, and it's entirely focused on the oceans. And so what I want to do with the time I have tonight, which is very brief, is tell you a little bit about what this research is likely to entail over the next 7-year period during which we operate. Okay, so the idea here is to try and do groundbreaking interdisciplinary science to drive ocean innovation. And so this is why industry, why government and NGOs, and of course universities are all central to the success of this program. And so we combine ocean science, engineering, data science, ocean governance, and social sciences towards major problems that we have in the ocean. And this spans everything from new technologies and new discoveries, all the way through social license and sustainable communities, which of course is part of what we're thinking about here tonight. And so the overall goal is safe and sustainable development. And so we recognize the ocean as a major resource. There are opportunities there, but we need to think about sustainability and to extract those opportunities as sustainably as we can. And so some of the things to think about, which fall under this umbrella, is carbon and, of course, climate change, fisheries, aquaculture, insurance and risk at working at sea, the logistics of working at sea and even of doing science, security, food security being paramount there, and of course technology, which is rapidly evolving, particularly in ocean sciences, which is a wonderful opportunity. Now, it's not just these three universities involved. There are major partners internationally, and so you see them listed here. In the United States, we have Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory of Columbia University, and in Europe, we have major partners to the Marine Institute in Ireland. We have the Institute of Marine Research in Norway, LabExMer, and we have a LabExMer member here among our group. We have the Alfred Wegener Institute. We have Guiamara, which is under Christian Albrecht University, and collectively we're trying to tackle some major problems. And so internationally this team is among the world's best, and so we've picked some of the top partners internationally to focus on our part of the world. And let me explain why that part exists in just a moment. If we look at some of the other partners involved here, we have Fisheries and Oceans Canada, several other federal departments, Environment and Climate Change, Defence Research, the Canadian Navy, the National Film Board of Canada, the Province of Newfoundland through several departments, as you see here, Innovate NL, and then the Department of Tourism, Culture, Industry and Innovation, and then the Province of Nova Scotia as well, all contributing significant resources to this initiative. There are also a bunch of industry partners. A lot of this is in kind. A lot of it is still being discussed and negotiated. I'm not going to go through these one by one, but you can see it spans technology, fisheries, aquaculture, and beyond in terms of the different groups that have become engaged within the Ocean Frontier Institute. And so the focus here is the area you see surrounded in the red circle. It really extends from perhaps southern Nova Scotia, even all the way down to Cape Cod, and as far north there as the area between Greenland and Labrador. And so this is the Northwest Atlantic. It's a really important spot for science. Some of the key issues is that this is one of the major hot spots in the world where deep water forms in the ocean. And that's really important because it extracts heat from the atmosphere and it transports carbon dioxide into the deep ocean. Just to give you a sense of this, the top 10 meters of the ocean holds more heat than all of the atmosphere combined. And so what's happened over time is that the oceans have absorbed a lot of the excess heat that we've generated in the atmosphere, but of course at a price. And so that's an important reason for that. But of course, everybody in this room knows, of course, about the productive fisheries and the fact that this ecosystem is changing. We're seeing shrimp moving further north as waters warm up. And so that, of course, has a lot of ramifications, not just for the fishery itself, but for all the people who link to the fishery. And so it creates a very social, complex system to study. Along with this, we see changing ice cover, we see ocean acidification and ocean warming. All of these are challenges in terms of what the future ocean is likely to look like and the way it's likely to work. And so this, of course, has a lot of social and economic importance. We can think of the obvious ones like fishing and aquaculture, but we can also think about trading and shipping. We can think about security, marine tourism, coastal communities, and the gateway to the Arctic and what that all means for shipping and the way that business is conducted in the North Atlantic. And so the initial focus here is both on ocean change and also strategies or solutions, if you like, to deal with that change in order to maximize what we extract from the oceans. And so we're interested in the atmosphere and the way it interacts with the ocean, shifting ecosystems, sustainable fisheries, marine safety, sustainable aquaculture, and what we do with all this ocean data to utilize it most effectively. And so I want to talk very briefly about three of the modules because I think they're very relevant to tonight's discussion. There are actually 16 of these major modules that form the early basis for the Ocean Frontier Institute. We will expand from this, but these are the initial foci for the research. And this is a project led by Sarah Iverson at Dalhousie University, looking at basically the movement of cod and also halibut. And so using acoustic tags, they're going to look at the way these fish move among different habitats and the way that different populations are linked to one another. And so the idea there is to try and improve the sustainability and how we utilize these stocks. A second module is led by Noel Cadigan at the Marine Institute here in St. John's, and also by his colleague Paul Winger is involved in fishing gear technology. And there are two pieces to this. First of all is improving the stock models, the assessment models that we use to try and evaluate how much fish is out there. And that, of course, sets the quotas or plays a role in setting the quotas for how much fish that we take. A second piece of this is trying to improve the sustainability of the technology. So in other words, fishing gear that has less of a bycatch problem, less of an environmental footprint in terms of how it impacts bottom environments, and so on. And the third piece is our own Ratana. And so this is a piece that focuses on governance. And really there are two pieces to this. One is looking backward on fisheries in Atlantic Canada, and particularly Newfoundland, and what has happened and what it has meant, and then using that information to look forward, to ask what are the fisheries of the future likely to look like. And so these are all very complex questions, and they really depend very much on partnering. And that's why we formed this partnership, to try and make the Ocean Frontier Institute a success. And so just to finish up with this last slide, the idea here is to drive excellence and innovation. We really want to change the way that we do science by bringing together natural and social scientists. We want to bring together policy and social science and natural science. We want to bring together Dalhousie and Memorial and UPEI and our international partners in France and Germany and in the United States to try and solve these major problems that we have in our oceans, to come up with real solutions that can improve sustainability. So keep your eyes open. In the next 7 years, we'll have a lot of news to relay. We're about 1 year into our mandate, and primarily we focused on getting off the ground, which we have now done, and the research is now starting up in earnest. So there'll be lots of opportunities for students and postdocs, hopefully lots of opportunity for new information and new chances for sustainable oceans. So thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Paul. That's really great to hear all the exciting work that is going to be happening with the Ocean Frontier Institute. So again, there's a lot of opportunity to engage and also to make contribution to the research, because it has to really be relevant to the province, and this is a very important opportunity for all of us here to be able to see this kind of major initiative happening in the province. So thank you, and enjoy your hockey. And now, good thing we have Julie and Georgette here, so we have more conversation about the OFI. We definitely can have that. Okay, so I'm holding this big book because there are a couple of reasons for that. One of the bios of the panelists is in here, but I will not be able to hold this for too long because it's pretty heavy. This is like 900 pages. And it's a product of the project Too Big to Ignore, which is a global partnership for small-scale fisheries, one of the products. Basically, the Too Big to Ignore is funded by the Social Science and Humanity Research Council of Canada. And we started in 2012, and we're focusing on small-scale fisheries, small boat fisheries in this province. But it's a global partnership. That means that we work with organizations around the world and also researchers around the world in order to look at some of the main questions, key questions affecting the sustainability of small-scale fisheries. For the most part, when we talk about fisheries, sometimes we think about industrial fisheries, and oftentimes, if you are from Newfoundland, you know that they're also about small boat fisheries. So those, at least those two sectors are very important, and they must be part of that conversation when we are talking about sustainable fisheries. So what we are trying to do in Too Big to Ignore is really to highlight the importance of small-scale fisheries and the contributions that they are making in order to, in terms of food security, job employment, and in many parts of the world, they also help alleviating poverty as well. So the work that we have been doing take place in various parts, almost 40-some, 50-some countries around the world. But we also do a lot of work in Newfoundland as well. And organizing the World Fisheries Day is actually part of that initiative. So if I could get, Miguel, if I could get a slide to show the sponsorship of the event, I wanted to make sure that we thank everybody who's been important part of this event. This is the third time we're doing this now, so I'm hoping that we will be able to see this kind of event happening more. Just show the slides if you don't mind. Yes, just put on the, yep. I know it's going to run quickly because we have a timer happening here. But basically, right, okay, so I'm based at the Department of Geography. My name is Ratana Chunpakdi, in case I forgot to introduce myself. Sorry about that. It's been like, I've been talking with everybody for so long now, I kind of forget. But, the people who are outside with our exhibition definitely important part of this event. We have the island rooms of Petty Harbor, and you would hear a little bit more about Fishing for Success because Kimberly Oren is one of our panelists. The fish that you enjoyed is part of St. John's Fish Exchange. One of the chefs definitely came from there. And World Wildlife Fund with the WWF Canada, with our panda as well. Victoria, you're still in here somewhere? Yes, very good. So thank you for that. And hopefully you'll be able to participate in the discussion as well. Oceans Learning Partnership, that people that come with the touch tongue, so thank you for that. Ocean Frontier Institute, you just heard about. Marine Geomatics Research Lab, that's Professor Rodolphe Devere of the Department of Geography. So the students always participate in this event. My two classes, the Geography 4300 and also 6250. So thank you for your exhibitions. They were really fantastic. And I'm hoping that you will be able to contribute to the discussion tonight as well. So the four in orange and our panelists for tonight. And perhaps I could just introduce each one and then invite them to come and sit in the front. So we'll start from Kimberly. And Kimberly Oren, I have the little thing here that I would read, but maybe you can just feel free to also say a few things about yourself as well once we get started. So Kimberly volunteers in her community of Petty Harbor, Maddox Cove as a town councillor, a founding member of the Tourism Association, and also serves on the executive team for Food First, Everybody Eats project to advise the province food policy. So she recently completed the Fishing Masters 4 program at Marine Institute and is currently logging sea time in order to level up on her commercial fishing license. That's very exciting. Okay, in 2014, Kimberly co-founded Fishing for Success, a non-profit social enterprise in Petty Harbor, which is creating a new pathway for the youth of Newfoundland and Labrador to experience their fishing heritage through fish as food and fish as culture. So welcome Kimberly to the panel discussion. Once we have everybody, then I would introduce what we are trying to do for tonight. Okay, thank you. Okay, the next person is John Norman. So John has been involved with multiple organizations throughout the province and also Canada, many of which focus on built heritage, environmental protection, economic development, and tourism. He's the founder and president of the Buena Vista Horticultural Society. You have to excuse me now, having a hard time reading this. President of the Stewardship Association of Municipalities of NL, chair of the Buena Vista Peninsula Dialysis Committee, president of the Buena Vista Trinity Chamber of Commerce, and vice chair of the Buena Vista Historic Townscape Foundation. Lots of things that John's been doing, which is all fantastic. But now a mayor for the town of Buena Vista. John was one of the youngest municipal politicians in the province when his political career started in 2010. He's a registered professional Skate Canada coach and former skater and co-coaches Buena Vista Skating Club. Yes, exactly. The other part of the, the bio, I'll skip. Yes, otherwise we'll be here all night. Okay. Thank you, John, for joining from Buena Vista. Okay, the third panelist is Professor Katia Frangudes. And Katia is a senior researcher in UMR Amir Laboratory of the University of Brest in France. So Katia basically is a visiting professor for 1 month, and her main research topics are women's role in European fisheries, marine resource governance, and fisheries management. She is also the facilitator of ACTIA, a European network of women organizations in fisheries, lobby for gender equality and women's rights in the European Union. And Katia is a member of Too Big to Ignore and a cluster coordinator of New Cluster Gender and Women in Fisheries. Welcome, Katia, to our discussion. And I lost the last one already. Hang on a second here. Okay, the last panelist for tonight is Dr. Alicia Said, and she's a PhD. Recently graduated PhD It's a postdoctoral fellow, basically, with the Too Big to Ignore, and she got her PhD in biodiversity management at the School of Anthropology and Conservation, University of Kent in the UK. So she has a degree in both bachelor's and master in geography from the University of Malta. And her research aims to understand the interacting processes of fisheries governance and management in Malta, with a focus on fisheries and marine policy occurring since the EU accession in 2004. So Alicia is interested in investigating how multi-small-scale fishers are experiencing and responding to policy shifts, and exploring how such changes affect the sustainability of small-scale fishing fleet. Okay, so Alicia started with Too Big to Ignore in September, and she's going to be joining us tonight to talk about lots of interesting stuff for our conversation. So have a seat. Let's give the microphone to our panel. Okay, she's joining us. All right. Okay. So what I asked our panelists for tonight, the conversation is about what we need to do to think about coastal sustainability of the communities and also of fisheries. Some people think about this as, not related. Some people see them together. But as a province of Newfoundland, as other experience that you might have elsewhere, we're inviting you to bring those kind of idea, especially those innovation and transformation that really are happening or need to take place in order to see the future, sustainable futures of the small-scale fisheries and fisheries in general, for the communities, for the benefit of the community and the society at large as well. So I have invited the panelists to speak for about 8 to 10 minutes, and then then we would open up the conversation to the audience, and then we would have Q&As and other discussion with the panelists. We'll start with you, Kimberly. We come from the closest to the furthest of all. Okay. What's happening here? There's a sound. Okay.
We think this one works better. The problem when you give a teacher 8 to 10 minutes, you know what happens. So, but thank you very much to Too Big to Ignore for having us here this evening, and thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about Fishing for Success and Fishing for Success programs. Primarily what we're all about is engaging young people. Today we're talking about the future fishery, and oftentimes what we forget to do is ask those who it will impact the most, which is young people. And the average age of fishermen here is almost 60. And if we're talking about the future fishery and we have all those old folks sitting around the table talking about it, they're forgetting to ask the young people to the table and ask them what would they like that fishery to look like, for them to be interested in working in it and making a future for themselves here in Newfoundland and Labrador. Additionally, if you stopped by our booth there, you saw that we had hashtags up. So if you're in Twitterverse, then you recognize what those mean. And so we oftentimes think about fish as a commodity as fishermen. And so it's how much am I getting for that fish so that I can pay the crew, pay for the fuel, the bait, and all of those things. And what we forget is that fish is food. Fish feeds us, it nourishes us. It's when we have family over, it's food. When we have a celebration, it's the foundation of our celebration. And so we forget that fish is food. And so we're trying to get people to think about that also. Stand in line at the grocery store and look and see how many people are buying fish. How many of you eat fish twice a week? The Canada Food Guide suggests that for health reasons, we eat fish twice a week. The other thing that we like to think about too and bring people's minds around is fish as the foundation of our culture. And so we think about interpreting the world around us and interpret that as literature or art or music. And that goes back to being on the sea or fishing. And so that's why you see all those fish paintings. And so if you were to come out to Island Rooms of Petty Harbor, it's only 25 minutes from here, and if we take you fishing, we're not just going to take you fishing. Leo's going to tell you lots of stories besides teaching you the traditional handline fishery. Then when you come back to the shed and he teaches you how to fillet a fish and tells you all this interesting pieces of information about the pieces and the parts of the fish. We're also going to help you paint about your fish or create some kind of artwork about your fish. And this helps you connect to your fish as being another being in sharing this ecosystem that we're all trying to share and learn how to deal with. So we forget that too, that this fish was a living thing. And we forget about that when we buy food now in the grocery store and we're rushing down the aisles buying things in boxes and plastic bags and jars, and we forget that these things were living plants and living animals. And so it's reconnecting us again with that ecosystem and those living beings that we call food. So that's what we're all about, is reconnecting us once again with our natural heritage, our cultural heritage, and that in turn helps to connect our young people with this place. I'm also a former high school science teacher, and science is a culture in itself, and by definition it wants to be objective. And I don't want to be objective here in Newfoundland and Labrador. I want to say this is the best place and I want you to stay here. And that's not very objective. And so when we talk about and get young people outside, we want them to be cold, and we want them to experience the salt water, and we want them to have the hand line in their hand and feel the fish pull on the line, and we want them to connect with everything about that environment. And that's what's going to help to connect them to place, not just reading something in a book and something objective and number counting and statistically analyzed and all that kind of thing. There is a value in that, but it's a different place. So that's so engaging young people. Hopefully you've talked to Megan and Rebecca about the Girls Who Fish program, and we developed that out of a need because we recognize that women have we have a cultural place where men open the doors for us, and when we go fishing, they take the fish off the hook, they put the bait on the hook. If we build a campfire, the guys make the campfire. And so we don't learn to do any of these things. And so that's not good for us either, because we're missing out on a lot of experiences by letting the men in our lives do these things. So when we have a Girls Who Fish program, and it's a bunch of girls out there, they've got to build the campfire. And Leo, sometimes he raises his hand up there. Yeah, and Leo. And but the young women have to learn these things and do them themselves. And so we have a lot of fun out there because they get to make the campfire and take the fish off the hook and learn to cut out cod cheeks, learn to make fish stew. And that's empowering for young women to experience those things. Of course, in the back of our mind is that one day these young women may become fishermen, because the reality of it is that only 21% of the fishermen in Newfoundland and Labrador are women. And so we have, again, an industry then that is challenged in the way that it's not, there's an equality issue there. So that's another concern. Hopefully Megan and Rebecca told you about our youth cod fishery, which is a partnership that we have with Choices for Youth and Thrive Community Youth Network to provide experiences for young people who normally wouldn't be out on the water or fishing. And at the end, they get to go fishing and take their fish home as food to their families. And so check out our programs. And if you have the opportunity during the summer, go fishing with us, because how do we pay for all of these wonderful programs? We take folks out for wonderful experiences, and when they pay for them, the revenue from that goes to fund our community and youth programming. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kimberly. So lots of innovative things that you have been working on, which is fantastic, and this is just so close to us here, and many people can participate in that if they like. Okay. Let's us invite John to be the next person to speak about what do you think in terms of innovation for sustainable communities and sustainable fisheries? Please, John.
Sure. Okay. This one? Yeah, very good. So, of course, I'll lean a little bit more toward the sustainable community piece, although that said, left out of my apparently very lengthy biography, which someone from my office sent you, so it might have been 5 pages, was that I am a geography grad, a science grad, was in this room just a few years ago, it seems now. I actually worked under Norm Caddo for a while, did coastal geomorph and coastal erosion as my thesis, and then career-wise went out, did education, taught as a science teacher, and moved into a 180, which is the piece you left out of the bio. So for those who are aware of what's happening in the community of Bonavista and the Bonavista region over the past number of years, lots of young people moving in, lots of businesses, and this person that is restoring all the buildings and moving in all the businesses. Some have heard of this magical person, some have not. That magical person is apparently me. So the big piece is I am the Chief Operations Officer and co-owner of Bonavista Living, Bonavista Creative, and the Bonavista Creative Workshop. And what we do, and this represents a complete 180 for me and my science background, is capitalize business-wise on the sense of place and the place capital that Bonavista has. And historically, Bonavista has been known as the cod capital of Newfoundland. It's been officially or unofficially the cod capital for hundreds of years. It's one of the oldest English settlements on the continent. We had censuses being completed in Bonavista in the 1640s. And these people were there, and many of the people in Bonavista now remain there because it is a living, breathing fishing community. And the piece that I would like to discuss ever so shortly would be that purpose for these communities. When you look at the fact that there are over 250 incorporated municipalities and then many, many more unincorporated municipalities and local service districts in the province, over 80% of those are along our coasts. And when you look at, of course, Harris Center reports, and I've had Rob Greenwood and Alvin and others out to Bonavista talking and studying over the past number of years, there is very little purpose for a lot of these communities to exist if there is no fishery in those communities anymore. It is the lifeblood of Bonavista. It is the second largest employer in the community, employing in a town of about 4,000 people, about 500 people work directly in the fishery, and then you can only imagine the indirect people that are tied to that industry. We currently have the largest crab processing facility on the island that in just the last couple of years went through a $4.5 million expansion. I didn't really know they were expanding processing facilities in the fishery. And now, of course, the worry of the community is where the crab stocks are going. It represents almost 80% of the product that is going through our facility, that on the assembly lines alone, or the production lines, employs about 360 directly there. And then many others attached to the crab fleet in Bonavista. So there is a lot of work, a lot of diversification work going on in Bonavista. But the fact of the matter is, one can try to be optimistic and look and hope that if the fishery collapses, if the crab collapses, we hope to look at other options for Bonavista. But the options for strong economic growth, or at least stability long term, is the fishery. And I think that is the argument that many bureaucrats and politicians are making today. So when I look at what I have been doing through Bonavista Living, Bonavista Creative, our regional chamber of commerce, it has been all about developing the livability of our region to lower the average age, which has fallen 4 years in a row in Bonavista. And the average age of the person moving into our community last year was 33. And there were dozens and dozens of young people in their 20s and 30s, predominantly from St. John's, moving to Bonavista for opportunity. Perhaps not necessarily opportunity in the fishery, but other opportunities that present themselves as a result of the built landscape and the sense of place and the place capital that the community has as a result of having hundreds and hundreds of years in a successful cod, halibut, and now crab fishery. And to diversify the economy to the point where you enhance the livability that will attract young people. And some of those young people, not the majority, but some, are now entering the fishery. And they're looking at entering the fishery in new and unique ways. They are discussing cooperatives. This is not a new idea in the province, but it is definitely a new idea for Bonavista. They are discussing high-end fish product, which is something that Rhett and I discussed many years ago when we did a cross comparison of Iceland and Newfoundland. And the idea that historically in Bonavista and for much of rural Newfoundland and the fishery, it seemed to always focus on quantity. And this doesn't jive with where the rest of the market for Bonavista specifically and the products that we're producing in other sectors, be it skincare lines, premium sea salts, handmade chocolate. It is a premium, limited quantity product that is sent for export and produces much higher yield for the community. But our fishery to date in Bonavista and through much of the province does not jive with that move. And that is the problem. So going forward, as mayor, chair of the Chamber of Commerce, and also sitting on the Regional Fishery Committee, we have to work with our processors, like Ocean Choice International, our large processor on the peninsula right now, and try to figure out a way how we move from this large industrialized fishery that is shipping out many, many millions of tons and moving to a higher quality product that is leaving ports like Bonavista around the world and providing a more than livable income for the people that are actually working in that industry. So a piece, as I said, of what we're trying to do is enhance that livability, getting young people in, stabilizing the population. And when I spoke to some of the Sullivans a couple of years ago, and we were just kind of starting this major work in Bonavista, I just asked them why. You have, I think at that time, 6 or 7 processing facilities. I think they have 5 now around the island that are fairly substantial. And you're doing significant expansion in Bonavista. And they were quite frank. They were quite honest. Don't know if they make these statements publicly, so I won't say which person from the company said it. But they stated that Bonavista clearly has a future. We see that there is a strong sense of place, of belonging, economic growth and opportunity here. We can see staff, human resources, living here 20 years, 30 years, 40 years down the line. And they said there are many other communities that we have assets in, and we can't say that with surety, that people will be living there and that we won't have to import all staff. So there's a lot of interesting discussions going on at the local level in Bonavista, but the evolution of seeing where the fishery is going, how we can move into the next higher end premium market opportunity for Newfoundland, as they've seen in Iceland and Norway, is where I'd like to see Bonavista as a pilot go. Thank you.
What a fantastic example there, John, for the kind of work that you've been doing. I think we all should be interested in moving to the Bonavista. Maybe you don't want all of us there, but anyway, the young ones you want, right? Okay, okay. So now we move a little bit out of the province, and we're going to go and see what Katia, the example that she may have from France and other parts of Europe, to speak on this topic. Katia, please.
Well, I don't know so much about Canada, I am sorry. I just learned during this 1 month I am here, quite a lot of things from you, and I think that you have many ideas on how to develop your communities. I had the chance to go to Fogo Island where I met you, and I hear the people speaking about the future of the communities. And now I just hear what's happening in Bonavista. So I am from France. I am living in France. I am Cypriot by origin, and I am living in France. So I have a double nationality, we say in French. And I am living in a place which is very similar to your place in Bretagne and in Brest, particularly, which is the extreme west part of France. We have more or less the same climate, except that it's less cold than here. But it's raining and it's windy. And we have a lot of fisheries too. And we have some problems also with our communities, not from the same point of view, but the young, of course, they go away to find a job. So fisheries become less interesting activity. But we have many, many people coming to live on the coast, especially people from Brittany that they immigrate to Paris and they come back. So again, we have the same problem like you, that the population is quite old in many places in Brittany. But as we have to go back to small-scale fisheries, because we think that maybe the future of fisheries is the small and not the large scale, in my place, and I think we visited this harbor, for example, what we say that small-scale fisheries, it's more local because boats are coming home every day, they bring fish. We eat fish, we don't eat only fillets, we also eat whole fish, and I am surprised that here we don't see a whole fish, we just see fillets. And when boats coming home, women, the wife of fishermen, sell fish close to the boat, and they make, they add value, as we say in Europe, to the fishing product by selling directly the fish. So this type of activities become an attraction, especially for tourists, and also for the local people, because it's 12 kilometers from Brest, and I am going quite often on the weekend, on Saturday, to buy my fish from the local community. And as I am a specialist of women, so that's why I promote the direct sale of fish. Because women, they are very involved on this type of activity in fisheries. And maybe the future of fisheries is also found in women stories. I mean, in many places we don't have crew, and we never think that women can replace men, because we consider, in Europe, especially in France, we consider that women cannot be on board. They cannot go fishing. But again, in my area, I have a young girl. We know a young girl. She's a fisherman, as we learned the other day in Fogo Island, that we cannot say fisherwoman. And she's fishing with her mother. They go, both of them, harvesting on a small-scale boat. And they think that small-scale fisheries can be a job opportunity for women in local places. We don't have in France so much this, you have here women working in fishing processing plants, because we don't have this, as we don't do fillets, we don't have this activity. And, but anyway, the last 10 years, the European Union, because we are a member of European Union, so on fisheries we must follow the European fisheries policy, the common fisheries policy. So France or other member states cannot do what we want. But the last 10 years, the European Union decided that we have to put an effort to develop local communities, to diversify their activities, their economic activities. And as we have subsidies for our fisheries, of course, as in many places in the world, so European Union give some money to the local communities to develop activities with having relation to fisheries, and we try to develop our fisheries communities through, I don't know if they are successful, but we find new products, to do new products, to add value in new products, and by a small processing, and do gastronomic, more gastronomic products that they can get a good value, good prices. We develop again the direct sale, and we try to find possibilities to develop our fisheries communities, because I spoke about France, but in Greece, for example, in small islands, fisheries are, they don't have places where to sell their fish. So bring fish from a small Greek island to the mainland in Athens, it takes too much time and is quite costly. So the idea is how to develop all these places through this special fund that European Union give. So, but this is our story. I don't know if I...
Yeah, thank you, Katia. It's interesting you should mention direct sale. For us, actually, we just have now been able to do that. Just not what, two years? Yeah, just last year. So that's very new for us here. And we'll get back to you later, perhaps, because I like to, talk a bit more about the cooperatives and the kind of organization you're talking about. But now we wanted to move to another aspect of innovation by Alicia, who would be speaking. Perhaps, I'll let her say whatever she wants to say in terms of what we need to do for innovation or for sustainable fisheries and sustainable communities.
Thank you very much for inviting me to the panel this evening. I will go in a bit of a tangent and will be speaking about innovation in research on small-scale fisheries. It was interesting to know that while I was coming in, we're actually in the innovation hall. I'm not sure if that was done on purpose or not, but it's good to speak about innovation in the innovation hall. So at the moment, as Professor Chubagdi introduced before, I am a postdoctoral fellow with Too Big to Ignore, and I am working on the issue of transdisciplinarity in small-scale fisheries. So the idea of transdisciplinarity as an approach in research is about integrating the different knowledges. So it's about getting the knowledge of fishermen, knowledge of scientists, and integrating them to approach sustainable small-scale fisheries. Basically, I have been involved in fisheries-related matters for all my life. So I was brought up in a fishing community in Malta, in the Mediterranean, and I'm a researcher also, and I also had a history working for the European Union Council in Brussels. So I was kind of involved in the different spectra related to fisheries governance. And this kind of enticed me to engage in this transdisciplinary approach to small-scale fisheries in Malta in my studies. And it was kind of by chance rather than by design, because when I started my research, I was kind of I took a disciplinary approach. So I was doing human geography. So I was engaging with the concepts of human geography. And then when I was doing my research and I was speaking to the local fishermen, so I went there with my structured questions, because that's what researchers do. They go with questions, so they will get the answers and get the results. And when I was conducting my questions, I could notice the development of a narrative from the fishers that was not fitting into kind of my framework. So I was noticing that they have a different story that I was kind of expecting. I'll give you an example. So I was looking into the impacts of bluefin tuna fishery and the impact of the drastic reductions of quotas. And I was speaking to the fishermen and asking them. So I was ticking my boxes of what fishermen think about the bluefin tuna recovery plan as part of the common fisheries policy that Katia just mentioned. And what I noticed is that the fishermen were explaining things that were beyond my framework. So they were telling me that due to the due to the reduction of quotas in the bluefin tuna, fishermen started fishing for other fisheries, which were not equivalently managed and did not get the same attention from the institutions. So basically, this kind of got my attention that I need to kind of integrate the story of the local fishers into my research in a more transdisciplinary way. Because if I was not open to that narrative, then I was not able to understand these linkages. And so basically, the aim and the need for approaching small-scale fisheries through transdisciplinary research is not only as an approach to get the fishermen story, but also to get fishers working with policymakers. So John was mentioning here how the different stakeholders are getting together to kind of see how to plan the strategy, the long-term plans. So that's I think that's an important way of getting all the people around the table and giving the same level of empowerment to all the stakeholders to make sure that the narrative of everyone is getting the same attention, and in a way kind of identify the problem and co-design the solution to the problem in Bonavista and everywhere for sustainable small-scale fisheries. Thank you. Yeah.
This might be one of the few opportunities here that we would hear so many positive stories. It's almost unheard of that we should be, feeling all good about what's going on in fisheries, especially in the province. Are you all sort of like suggesting, maybe I should just ask this, right? There must be some conditions, there must be some, situations or some factors or some drivers that would be important for all those things that you're talking about to happen. Maybe you can just speak quickly about, if we really want to see this kind of success happening as you are talking about here, what would be some of the things that we need to overcome in order to make that happen? Because it can't be just it happened on its own, right?
Yes.
There must be many pieces
on?
that need to be there. Okay, quickly,
No,
please.
really.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously money, you could throw money at this problem and I could spend it. But the biggest thing that we need access to fish in order to teach young people how to fish. So we operate within the 3-week recreational or food fishery window. And so that's obviously very limiting. The year before last, we had Choices for Youth scheduled for every Wednesday in that 3-week window. It's Newfoundland. The weather happened to be bad. We had to cancel it every Wednesday with Choices for Youth, and we didn't get to take out Choices for Youth to go fishing in 2016. Fortunately, last year, within that 3-week window that we had, we could take Choices for Youth out fishing every Wednesday that we had them scheduled. So we've been petitioning the federal government for a special access to fish to teach young people our fishing heritage, to take them out fishing, allow them then to bring fish home to their families that they caught so that they can sit around the table with their families with the meal of fish that they caught. The amount of pride that the young people get when they're able to do something like that is absolutely amazing. And oftentimes the young people that we work with are youth from families that are food bank dependent. So it's amazing, again, even more for them to be able to bring fresh fish home to their families. So if I was to put something on my wish list, that's what it would be, that we could have access to fish in the traditional vernacular way, that when the fish show up in Petty Harbor, sometime around the end of June, following the Capeland, that we could go out and teach young people to fish. And then when the fish go back to the spawning ground, generally around the end of December, then that we can't fish anymore because the fish have gone away. And so we fish from small boats, and we can't follow them to the Grand Banks, so they have sort of a protected MPA that way. So that would be my wish. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? You make it sound too easy, John, for what is happening in Bonavista. You're not going to give us a little secret, a little tip.
I want to know where John finds these Texas angels who
There you go.
that's what I want. I want one of those. Here you go, John.
Oh, I don't believe all the media. We started the company 4 years before I even met them. I started it when I was at Mon. But people like to romanticize that some miracle person showed up.
Just crushed me.
Sorry. No, my life savings is in clapboard and sheeter shakes. I think, again, reflecting on what we've been doing in Bonavista, a key piece is making those communities attractive. I mean, I don't just mean aesthetically, but livable. It's much easier for you. You're near a very large urban municipality, but for much of the province, it's incredibly, incredibly challenging to attract those youth. They may be interested in the fishery, but they are expecting a certain lifestyle in this day and age, and most rural areas can't, at this time, provide it. I think the trends that we're seeing, continent-wide in North America, is this movement. I don't know if anyone has seen the film The Millennium Dream, based on the American dream. There's been filmings all over Canada in the last little while. And it's about this movement toward a creative economy, a creative lifestyle, a career shift in what millennials feel, where they want to live, how they want to live, and their connection to place and space and the environment. And that plays key to what we are capitalizing on in Bonavista. For the simple fact, there's this weird little quote going around on CBC on a video of me saying, people are moving to Bonavista because they want backyard chickens. So they took one little clip of a long blurb that I had. But yeah, that's what I get for saying something so stupid. But it was one of many, many pieces. Many of the millennials specifically that are moving to Bonavista, they have small boats. They've bought small boats in the last couple of years. We go out fishing. I bring my EpiPen because I go into anaphylactic shock if I eat a fish. But I still go fishing, and I'll be like one of the women. I get someone else to take it off the hook for me. Yes, actually, the woman takes it off for me, who's in the boat. But the key piece there is that they're connected to the environment. They want to know where their food is coming from. They want to know where their eggs are coming from, where their fish is coming from, where their vegetables are coming from. And it's this growth in this minority group that are kind of shrugging off this lifestyle of not knowing where everything is coming from in their lives, what it's come in contact with. They're becoming disconnected with the environment. And that is what rural connection to agriculture, fisheries can provide you. And that is a growing minority group. So there are opportunities for places like Fogo and Bonavista and others that are going to be trendsetters in that realm.
Excellent. You have other thing to add to that, Alicia?
I have a question, like kind of the policies around these, like the government policy. How does this facilitate your whole plans? Because, for example, Katya was mentioning this European Union funding towards developing fisheries local action groups, but it's
So how supportive is the provincial or governments in Newfoundland
yeah. So
for this?
yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
the question?
I mean,
Okay.
Because the different EU member states can decide whether to implement them or not, or whether to give all the money to the big boats as subsidies, because it's kind of national jurisdiction of how funding is spent. So I'm kind of curious on how the kind of...
Go ahead.
All right. So I can speak to some of the issues that we've had with Fishing for Success. When we incorporated as a nonprofit, it was to teach children about our fishing heritage, especially from the viewpoint of when Leo and I grew up. That was back pre-cod moratorium, and kids could go down to the wharf and cut out cod tongues and have a bucket of cod tongues at the end of the day, and then walk into the Goulds and sell them for 10 cents a dozen, and you could earn pocket money to buy your hockey gear, or I was a nerd, I bought books. And so that's what you could do. And so kids can't do that anymore. And so we felt that kids were losing out because of their disconnection to nature, not knowing where their food came from, not connecting with elders and learning heritage skills from elders, all of those things. So we were trying to figure out how to do this. So we incorporated as a nonprofit to teach kids to fish. Well, we started doing this and then found out we couldn't get any funding for it, because just as soon as you start telling government that you're going to take kids out on the water, oh my God, liability, and you're going to give them knives, for God's sake. You're going to give children knives? what are you thinking? And so, yeah, no, you couldn't get any funding for it. So here we are, we're 15 minutes from downtown St. John's, and so that's the best place to incorporate to teach kids to fish, because that's where you have the most number of urbanized youth. But we also have the most number of tourists coming to visit Newfoundland, so we thought, oh, well, we'll teach tourists, we'll charge them. Now we have a revenue stream to pay for our youth programming. And then another interesting thing that we found out, it wasn't just tourists who wanted to come and experience traditional Newfoundland and Labrador fishing. It was Newfoundlanders who had never been fishing before, whose Nan and Pop had done it for a living, but they had never been. And so we were getting these calls from our townie tourists, that's what I'll call you, and they wanted to go fishing. And so that, I have to say, that was probably some of the most fulfilling experiences we have had, is taking people who are like, my pop did this every day of his life, and I've never done this, and this really, like they, it meant so much to them to be able to connect with what their ancestors have done. And that's, this is how this place was built. And so if you think about anybody who's lived in Newfoundland and Labrador, if we're talking about indigenous peoples or settlers, we had to depend on the sea. And we can't turn our back on that anymore. So how are we going to get our kids back to the sea? Fishing is a way to get them out there and get them interested. But it's not just fishermen that we're talking about. We're talking about also, marine transportation and scientists and oceanographers, or people who might become interested in developing new forms of technology or energy from the ocean, or pharmaceuticals, or any of those things. But they won't have a chance to even think about it until we get them back to the ocean's edge and get them off of those virtual screens that kids spend 2.5 to 8 hours a day on those virtual screens. So,
yeah.
so
you both speak on the the need for reconnecting with the
yes,
nature and everything.
Absolutely.
Very good.
And so we don't get any funding from government, and so please come to Fishing for Success during the summer and go fishing with us. And when we charge you and you think it's too much, don't balk at it, and and tip Leo really big. And in the winter, we're going to start developing snowshoeing and ice fishing. So join us and have a great time.
Right. Thank you. Okay. I just want to make sure that we give opportunity for our audience also to ask questions or have other points that you like to make, and examples that you have about innovation in particular. Over here, the microphone, Vesna, please. Okay. Introduce yourself, you don't mind, and then just...
Hi, Neil Burgess. I'm surprised you don't have anybody on the panel who can talk about fisheries management a little bit, because it seems in this province at least, fisheries management and most of the commercial industry is geared towards big boats, big plants, high volume, low value, freezing everything. And it, like, for somebody from Europe, it's completely different than what the rest of the world eats. Fresh fish, and they pay better money for it than frozen. And you can't buy fresh fish here in the city, except stuff that comes from away, or it's a week old, or, I mean, I'm appalled by that. But so how do you guys tip the balance in terms of political influence and power in the fishing industry towards small fisheries and communities and all that? It seems to be just completely lost in the industry here in the province.
Okay. Thank you for that question. You'd like to
So
address?
that is a challenge, and it is a problem. And I mentioned that initially about fish as a commodity instead of fish as food. And Ratna mentioned about direct sales coming online last year. And so getting fishermen into the mindset of being able to do that is something that is being worked on, because that's a whole nother thing again, getting fishermen used to not just selling to the plant, but marketing their product and being small businessmen in their own right, which is something different that Newfoundland and Labrador has never really treated fishermen that way, in my opinion. And this is something also that in my volunteer position on Food Policy's executive board that I'm constantly talking about, making fish accessible to people who can go to a marketplace, a fish marketplace? Like we can go to a farmer's market and buy fresh vegetables. Why can't we go to a fish market and buy fresh fish, whole fish, so that you can poke at the eye and see it came in today? And teaching people how to process that fish so that a person can buy a whole fish and then process it themselves at home and make a meal and make fish stock and use the whole fish. And so that goes back to changing this whole thing that we've gotten into of here's a fish, we use the fillet and the tongue and the rest goes in the harbor. So right now we're in this set of like 65% of the fish is waste. And so it's a whole industry shift. It's a cultural shift again, because once freezer technology came online, like we got spoiled and used the square fish thing, and it's a lot of work because we're talking about changing food security here in Newfoundland and Labrador, doubling it in the next couple of years. Right now we have 10% of our food here is grown or made in the province, and we want to double that to 20. How are we going to do that? Needs to involve fish. And food waste is a problem. 40% of our food is wasted. And I'm sure if we were to think about all of that fish that's being wasted, that's a problem too. So I hope you had a chance to stop by and talk to Leo about the fish parts he had on the pan and how you can actually eat those and use more of the fish. So changing policy is an issue. So get on Food First NL.ca, look at the website, start interacting with that, and if you have an opportunity to participate in any of the Everybody Eats events, go to those and start talking about what you want as far as access to fish.
Yeah. You want to say something, Katia?
Yes, I'm going to just come back on the fisheries management. We're going to have young people, I mean, because we have the common problem. We're going to bring young people in fisheries because we don't have any more local people going to fisheries. But we know that the small-scale fisheries attract more people than the large-scale, which is the case in France. And the problem is, okay, we bring these people, these young people to become fishermen, or fisherwomen, but then we have the problem with access to quota. How we can bring these people and become fishermen, because the quota are held by some boats, and by quota it's quite costly, and the access is limited for that. The other day, 1 month ago, I was in a meeting in European Union, and it was about small-scale fisheries to develop and give more opportunities to small-scale fisheries. And one decision made politician of European Union, he told, oh yes, of course, the main problem is to give quota to them, because also small-scale fisheries have very, very little quota compared to the large scale, which is, again, our main problem. So, I mean, in one hand, we want to bring people in fisheries, and in the other hand, we know that it's very difficult to access, because if we don't change our current management policies, we cannot bring more people in fisheries. And I want to go back, because you mentioned something else before, and I think we have to play with that. Is this all these people that they are looking to find local products, the circular economy, as we say in France, quite often now many people are speaking, we buy, we consume, and we treat on local level. And to sell fish, we find some good ideas. It's to promote the local products, that farmers and fisher and shellfish farmers collaborate together, and they make the basket, what we call the box, the basket, I don't know what, with product, and we have fish and agriculture product together. So it's become really local, and we...
Community supported fishery?
No, I think it's a basket of food.
It's basket
yeah?
of food.
Yeah.
Okay.
The clients, they
Do they prepay for it?
Yes,
And then
yes,
okay,
yes,
so
yes,
community
yeah,
supported fisheries.
yes,
Okay.
yes, they prepay.
Okay.
It's prepared basket, but we include fish in,
In.
Okay.
which is quite a new idea. It's a way to have the local
Right.
products.
It's like a cooperative idea as well here,
Yes.
I think. Other question from the audience? Eunice?
Hi, Jonas Plan, PhD candidate in anthropology. So one crucial thing that I keep hearing is youth, how to get youth into fisheries. But here in Newfoundland, also in the rest of the world, I believe that's one of the biggest problems in small-scale fisheries, that youth is not actually entering in fisheries. And Newfoundland, it's actually, I believe, one of the biggest problems in fisheries, because you can't really enter unless you're a millionaire, your father has a license, and you are in a good relationship with your father. I know so many cases where fathers are selling to their sons for $500,000 their licenses. So I mean, how can we attract those youngsters? One thing is to attract, but how can we actually get them into those fisheries? That's one of the big questions. I believe your, John and Kimberly, your cases are like really good, positive examples. But also in the same time, both Bonavista and Betty Harbor are, I believe, top 5 destinations in Newfoundland where tourists come. What about the rest of the communities? How we can get that money also to there, so that also those young people would go out, fish some codfish, sell tongues, sell fillets, or get tourists out there. I believe that is one of the big key questions we have to ask, how to become sustainable here in Newfoundland.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, that's something that we can't address, and that's something that that has to be addressed at the federal level and the provincial level, and that's policy and government change. And it's so like you said, you have to be a millionaire basically. So if you were to buy a cod crab quota, it might cost you a minimum of $250,000, and then it's going to take you about 5 years to get to a level where you could buy a license. So you have to go to Marine Institute, get your courses, then you've got to log sea time and level up, and then you've got to show that you have 70% of your income coming from fishing. So you've got to be dedicated at doing it, which is hard to do. So if you're trying to work another job while you're fishing so that you can support yourself and eat while you're, it's very difficult to do. So because of that, it's really difficult for young people to do that. And so I'm kind of the so the government is addressing the problem with farming by opening up more land for young farmers. So I say that what we're trying to do right now for farming, because we have some similar issues with farming, that farmers are, you know, the average age is 60 and all of that. We have same issues. And they're opening up land for farming, and they've started little green thumbs in school, and agriculture in the classrooms, and community gardens, and school gardens, and salad bars in the school with local, fresh vegetables in schools, and they've got Agricultural Literacy Week, and all of this support from the government now to get kids interested in farming, and opening up land for farmers, and you know, making it cool to be the organic farmer and all of that. Why aren't we doing the same thing for fishing? Why don't we have a fisheries literacy week? Why don't we have government folks here this evening and see Newfoundland and Labrador stuff all over here this evening? Why don't we have little blue thumbs? Why don't we have, you know, fisheries in the school? Why don't we have similar things to support getting young people interested in fishing? So that's what we need to do. And I'm kind of at the thing that I know what, from my viewpoint of being a young person and being involved in fishing, and how that created a sense of place for me, and that, and how important it meant to me to be able to learn heritage skills from an elder who was not even related to me. And I know what it meant, and it glued me to this place, and I couldn't wait to come back here. And I know what that meant, and so I wanted to recreate that for other young people. And I think there's a value for that that can't be replaced. So all of these other problems you're talking about, I feel like let's just throw young people at this problem, and then government's finally going to wake up and say, hey, we've got to deal with this. there's a value to having people and young people involved in fishing. And so that's what I'm like. Let's just throw young people at the problem. So we just have to find them. Chickens in the backyard. Who wants it?
There's
I have a
another
question up there.
question. Couple of questions. Okay.
Hi, Kim, that was a good point. I just want to talk about the whole, I'm a high school biology teacher. My name's Pat Wells. I'm here doing a graduate degree now. And I'm concerned, like you, and many people in this room probably, why people from this province are taught with books. And no offense to Ontario, but why are we teaching kids about Ontario's ecology? Why aren't we teaching them about our ocean and ocean literacy? And that's a big thing for me. I feel really bad. Back in 2002, I was the person that wrote the sustainability unit for the ecology for 1206. It didn't get executed the way I wanted. We're coming on with new curriculum now, but now, and now is the time to get lesson plans, things like that in teachers' hands to get them to focus on the ocean. One of the reasons that Fishing for Success is such a great success, too, is it reaches the effective domain of the kids. Like, I take people out and fish. I see Leo all the time, right? And people are having a grand time with him, but like they get to see living things. They get to see whales. They get to be on the greatest teaching context on the planet, which is the ocean. I use it all the time when I can. But unless you make it attainable, reachable for teachers from any different level, then you're going to have kids that are not going to be reached in that domain. They're not going to fall in love with the ocean and with our province. You're not going to see them enter the fishery. I grew up on the seashore. I love the place. But, you know, unless you bring it to urban classrooms, unless you bring it to places, unless we stop teaching people about Ontario ecology, I don't think it's going to happen.
And that's a concern of mine also, because curriculum development is very expensive. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop curriculum. So the curriculum in our schools is curriculum for metropolitan areas. So our children, like Patrick says, our children are literally being taught to move away. They're not being educated to live in Newfoundland and Labrador. Now, are we going to rewrite curriculum for K through 12, every single subject level? I don't know. But what can we do right now? Every harbor and every bay can develop a program like Fishing for Success. Or just ask me and Leo. We'll sit down and we'll spread it to your community. I mean, every chance that I have to sit here and talk to people, I do. I go to municipality conferences. I go to every conference where they'll invite me. I went to Fogo Island. In fact, Fogo Island Co-op attended the Tongue Cutters documentary that we had this past summer at LSPU Hall. And following the documentary that talked about how Norway has maintained the tradition of tongue cutting for children, like we used to have in Newfoundland, and we don't do it anymore. We had a youth panel, 13 young people talking about how much it would mean to them to be involved in the heritage fishery. And the manager of the Fogo Island Co-op went back after seeing the young people talk, seeing the documentary. He went back to Fogo Island, and now young people on Fogo Island are cutting out cod tongues. That, providing young people, high school students, with part-time jobs after school in a heritage fishery is a huge deal. And we don't give that enough kudos. And at the end of the fishing season, one of the young men actually made $900 that week for cutting tongues. And he's now he's connected to his community. He realizes that if he works faster, learns better, that he can earn more money. I mean, like, you have to go to like business school here at MUN to learn that, So there's a lot of life lessons that you can get from things like that. And part-time jobs as a teenager, who didn't want to, as a teenager, have, a little extra money in their pocket, for all of those things that teenagers need some money for. And it's legal money. Like, let's get our teenagers with access to some legal money, okay? So.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So there are things that we can do that, you know, maybe we don't need government policy to change, and we can just get them done and mow them over, and then they'll look behind them and go, oh, okay, well, if you want some help, I guess we could change some policy for you.
Okay.
So,
Final question, perhaps? And we're going to have to wrap up. Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
It seems to me that the biggest problem that we have is the policy set by the federal government with respect to access. And I'd like to ask our two visitors from Europe, what rights do individuals have to access recreational fish in their respective countries?
We have recreational fish, yes. Yes.
So can
Yes.
everyone go fishing? And how much fish can they catch?
Yes, but I think in France recently they introduced some license of recreational fisheries. But you can go, yes. And especially what we have very, very common in France is on low and high tides. Everybody is going on the shore and gather what they find there. And this is a very old activity doing by a lot of French, and really on really important high and low tides there is many, many people gathering. But there are also people fishing by boat or as recreational.
Alicia, you'd like to add something?
Yes, so basically, I come from Malta, and with regards to recreational fishing, I think it has become a bit of a problem in Europe because recreational fishers are increasing, and in one of my research, I noticed that the increase in recreational fisheries has resulted from the fact that access to the commercial fleet register is closed. So since potential entrance to commercial fishing is closed, so fishermen who are for example, in Malta, if you're another islander, like you come from Malta and from an island, so you're kind of born to fish, right? So if you want to have a boat and you don't inherit a boat from your ancestors, you will get a recreational boat and fish for same species, and that has kind of created an impact on the small-scale commercial fishers. So although it's an open access, it's creating problems as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess unless there's any other question, I guess we're going to need to... You have a... Yes? Okay, Mauricio. Why not?
Hi, my name is Maurizio. I'm the green table on the taco. Sorry. I just want to make a point, actually, and if I may,
Sure.
about the youth and to introduce in the fishery. I think the government helps. I'm here since '99 in Newfoundland. I'm originally from south of Switzerland. My mom and dad are from Sicily, so I've been around a little bit the world, and I worked in many islands as a chef. And always seafood was my passion, and by default, now I'm the chef at the Fish Exchange here in St. John's. The government helped, in my opinion, the farmers more and more now, just because they realize that it's actually not only potatoes, cabbage, and carrots that you can grow in Newfoundland. And they realize that it's actually in the past 10, 12 years, is many chefs, especially popular faces like Jeremy Childs, Todd Perrin of the world, they brought in actually a brand new broadcast to all the parents, and they're able to go to the grocery store, and all of a sudden, any farmer is able to actually, showcase 10 different type of greens, 6 different basils, and so on, right? And so the variety inspire the parents to show the kids, hey, we don't have only carrots, cabbage, and potato, and we do in Jig's dinner. With the seafood, it's very unique, I find. Yes, it's all linked with the government and the policy and so on. But if you go in a grocery store now and you look for a Newfoundland type of fish. Even the word fish means cod, right? If you say, hey, I eat fish today, it means I eat cod. But yet, it is dozens and dozens very accessible seafood here in Newfoundland that is not shown to grocery stores, which is not shown to the parents, which are not shown to the kids. I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I try to show what a squid is, and which is caught in Newfoundland, a skate, a grenade, and monkfish, and all. I tell, hey, we have a shark come from Newfoundland. What do you mean shark is Newfoundland? I say, yes, it is, but yet we have no access whatsoever. So I think my point is that, and being a chef and I'm buying every day seafood. I'm flying in every single day seafood from Boston. It's actually purchased from Nova Scotia, which is sold by Newfoundlanders. So I think, it is the biggest picture here is how we introduce varieties to young generation without interfering with, oh, this is not your quota, or this is not the time of the year, or, I saw 10,000 pounds of halibut throw overboard, and, that's, you telling me if there's something wrong with that picture. But anyway, that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it sounds like, yeah, thank you. So as consumers, we all have a job to do here as well when it comes to innovation. Is there another question? Comment? Seriously? Okay, quickly. No? But let's go ahead. You have a microphone.
Sorry about that. I promised you'll go soon. I was just wondering, Kimberly was mentioning about that fish waste and how they're repurposing and stuff like that. In terms of the European Union or other countries or even Bonavista, I was just wondering if you've noticed any communities or any organizations that are doing interesting ways to repurpose fish waste, as we said, because a lot of it does get wasted, most commonly, right?
I know Fogo Island is talking about doing cat food. We've been experimenting with using other parts of the fish too. We've been drying the fish skins as pet treats. We've been training our Girls Who Fish members and then also members of the Mama Moments program of Choices for Youth. We've been training them to cut out the cod cheeks, the cod sounds, the napes and the bellies, and clean up the fish tails so that they can use parts of the fish that traditionally are waste. Because as I mentioned earlier, when you cut out the fillet and the tongue, then 65% of the fish is considered waste. And so we've been accessing that part, and then we had a pilot program, and we took the young women to Mallard Cottage, and they cooked a meal with that fish, and so we're trying to develop a program so that those young women can control a value chain, and we're calling it #BoatsToBowls. So if you're on Twitter, plug that hashtag in, and you can see our pilot program that we did. It took about a week and a half, and so we want the young women to control the value chain, as I mentioned, from the boat all the way to the bowl, and they'll go fishing, they'll process the fish, use all of the fish, and create food. And create a bowl of fish food and with original recipes with the help of Mallard Cottage chefs. So that's what we're working for. So that's some of the ideas that we've been doing. And as I mentioned, Fogo Island is also looking at that same thing too. And the idea is to try to get to 100% use of the fish. We've also partnered with artists to use parts of the fish in artwork. And this summer, there was a project called Island Nest, and one of the artists is from the Shetlands, Vivian Ross Smith, and she uses the fish skins in her artwork. And so I almost feel guilty using the fish skins as pet treats then, because she creates some beautiful artwork. And so if you want to look up Vivian and see some of the artwork that she creates, that would be great too. And so we're hoping to have her back and in the future. Did that answer your question?
Yes, that's great. And more conversation can have, right? When we go out to the reception. Any other points any panelists like to say? as a closing, because we are really going to stop now. John, last chance. You're good? Okay. Well, thank you very much, all those panelists. This has been wonderful conversation. It's such a, positive energy as well. I like that a lot, and I appreciate the participation of all the audience because, to really learn that there are many, many different ways we can all contribute to make sustainable fisheries and sustainable communities. This is very encouraging. Thank you. We have a little gifts for our panelists. So from our team here, from Too Big to Ignore, just bring the whole bunch together. Local, very local. That's part of what we do, right? In promoting, food, local food. And all right, okay. Thank you very much. The other one is for me. Right, okay. Thank you, Miguel. Okay. I always like my Brussels sprout. Okay. From Farmers Market. Okay. Last item before we go for the reception. You have done your eating of the tacos. We have the results for you in terms of the winner of course, everybody's a winner. By participating in the World Fisheries Day, you are already a winner. Thank you again. I didn't appreciate or send thanks to the Wooden Boat Museum and also the folklore earlier, but thank you. And, I don't know, the panelists, thank you very much for your participation. So, okay, ready for this? Okay, so what's the winner? Wow. Okay, well, she came all the way from Mexico, and fish tacos is, of course, a Mexican thing. So it's very nice to see that. And Alicia is trying to finish a master's degree, but now she can also have another degree in, right. Yeah. But thank you, Mauricio and the Fish Exchange for participating, and really you are sponsoring the event. We really appreciate that. I love your tacos. But I wanted to get Katia to tell. Did anybody figure it out what Katia served? No. 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 Can I have the microphone for? Here. Tell us what it is.
The fish?
Yeah, the fish.
It was tilapia. Fresh tilapia bought on the farmer market.
Yes.
Is a local pond here in Newfoundland.
Yeah.
And it was a whole fish.
Yeah. It's from aquaponic from Leicester Farm. So you get the whole fish, and for what, $7-8 a fish, like really big, beautiful fish. Okay, if you enjoyed that, so you can now know you can use halibut, you can use other fish. Fish is not just caught, and we can enjoy these together. Okay, yes, but please, we have a gift for you as well. Yes, thank you again for participating in this. And Katia, one of the bag is yours. Wonderful food, and yeah, right. Okay, and okay, all right. Thank you. So now we go and enjoy whatever is left outside and downstairs. Okay, have a wonderful, happy World Fisheries Day, everybody, and thanks again for coming. Appreciate it. Bye bye. Yes.